Well, here we are at the Times and Sunday Times Cheltenham Literature Festival, and look who I found. It's our very own John Pienaar. Hi, John.
Hi, James. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Now, obviously, you're doing an event today focusing on the US election. I mean, we're about a month out. You're going to be out there for us in a month's time. What is your reading on the state of the race? Everyone says it's basically a flip of a coin at the moment.
Well, it's tight. It will very likely stay incredibly tight. And I'm about to chair a debate in here at Cheltenham on what's in store and what's this election about, what's at stake in this election, and what might happen afterwards depending on who wins. And those questions are absolutely huge. This is the most consequential election for America, for the world, for many, many, many years. For America, and they're commonly now calling it the most important election since the American Civil War of 1861. And that's not the kind of flim-flam you get about these things. It seems absolutely justified. Between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, you've got almost the definitive polar opposite set of contenders here. And at stake for the world, including us, you've got America's role as the leader of the free world, leader of NATO. Support for Ukraine is significantly at stake. So Vladimir Putin, he's not here, as far as I know, unless he's in disguise somewhere at Cheltenham, but he's going to be watching this, I imagine, this whole debate very closely, and the American election even more closely. Likewise, Zelensky, likewise China, likewise NATO, likewise Europe, and I could go on and on and on. And for America, big issues of, well, the economy, which affects all of us after all. You've got abortion rights, which is a big talking point. Immigration, huge bone of contention across the world. Look, I could go on, but I needn't, because you can see just how much is on it.
Is the race going to shift at all in the final few weeks? I mean, it feels like Kamala Harris had a bit of a boost in the polls when she replaced Joe Biden at the top of the ticket, and since then she's had a very narrow lead in the national polls, in the battleground states, and there are 7 key ones. It's pretty much neck and neck. Are we going to get any movement during October?
Look, I mean, there's always going to be movement. It may just be very marginal movement, which is what we've seen since Kamala Harris took over from Joe Biden. I mean, that event alone upturned the contest, of course. I mean, Joe Biden looked more than odds on to lose before he finally stood down. Kamala Harris comes in, and on most of the polls you look at now, pretty much all the reputable polls, she's ahead, but ahead by a nose. And in the battleground states, the half a dozen states that decide the election, by less than a nose. So you would bet it's going to be really, really close right up to polling day, and maybe even after that. Because if it is very close, already on both sides, they are drafting in literally hundreds upon hundreds of lawyers to fight for or against whatever the result happens to be. And if it's very, very close, frankly, people are, in a sort of nervous undervoice, talking about it becoming very, very messy indeed.
Yeah, and it could come down to tens of thousands, maybe thousands of votes in some of the key swing states. And on that note, we had the vice presidential debate this week between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. Do you think there's a scenario in which she narrowly loses Pennsylvania and looks back and thinks, for all of Tim Walz's skills, Josh Shapiro, had he helped her that much more in Pennsylvania, might have been the better option?
Well, look, if Kamala Harris loses the election and loses Pennsylvania, of course there are going to be people who said you should have had Josh Shapiro. That's his state. At that point, if a candidate loses, then everyone knows exactly what went wrong. Everyone apparently could see it coming, even though they couldn't. And it's going to be, Tim Walz was too nice a guy. We all thought the coach, the football coach was a good idea. Maybe we needed someone a bit tough. All that stuff is definitely going to be said. It is possible when the night comes round for, let's say, Kamala Harris to lose Pennsylvania and still win, because there are other battleground states still in play, and so that's what makes the night. Well, I say gripping. It almost trivialises it. There's so much. It's so important, but it's going to be a minute by minute, second by second experience, because in an American election, they count and show the voting as it's happening. You can see the precincts come in, and then the US networks make a call long before it's official. And when the result is finally in, it's still not official, because it's got to be certified. And then you get into the business of all those lawyers and court fights and all the rest of it. So I'm going to be going out just ahead of the election in November. Going to be staying there in the state of Pennsylvania. I think maybe heading up to D.C., Washington D.C. for the night, depending on how things look. And then after that, the plan is to come back, with a result. But James, who knows?
If Donald Trump loses, is that the end of his brand of republicanism? Is that the end of MAGA republicanism?
Look, Donald Trump has said if he loses this one, as far as he's concerned, it's over. Okay, so look, I mean, we did think after he lost in 2020 that was going to be Donald Trump over. And so some of the big supporters turned against him and thought, well, okay, that's it. The Trump era's gone. And some of them were quite relieved about that and not comfortable with his incredibly abrasive way of doing things. But was he gone? Of course he wasn't. You can't put him down. And this time, though he says he's going to be out, I don't know if you bet your life on it. And then you've got others in the Republican movement who have kind of picked up his baton already. And the sort of MAGA Trumpite way of thinking is so deeply embedded, it's hard to see him going back to the old days of the old grand old party that we used to know.
I mean, it's a really good point. I've heard a lot of American political commentators say there's this assumption that if Trump loses in 2028, you might get a Nikki Haley type, a more traditional moderate Republican, if you can call her that. Whereas actually, if you ask MAGA Trump supporters who they would want instead, they might say someone like Tucker Carlson. You would end up with someone who is just a different shade of MAGA almost.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you might get this and you might get that. And I think the most sensible thing you can say about that at this point, James, is I don't know, and you don't know. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen next week. Never mind in a year or 18 months or 2 years' time. And there's given so much that's on it. It makes it as well as being fascinating and gripping, it's really quite nervous making.
Yeah. And is Pennsylvania for you? If you could know the results of one state right now, and that would indicate the results of the election, is it Pennsylvania for you? Is Pennsylvania going to be key?
If I could be handed a slip of paper by a genie of one state that's going to go one way or another, I think it would be Pennsylvania. Others, the Arizonas, the Wisconsins, the Michigans, the Nevadas, they're all going to be part of the mix. But Pennsylvania is one of the big swing states. And if somehow Kamala Harris's genie whispers in her ear tonight, okay, whatever else happens, you're going to win Pennsylvania, she is going to be waking up to breakfast thinking, I've got it.
And just finally, how much do events currently in the Middle East play into the US election? Because Donald Trump says, how much you believe this is another matter, but he says, look, we had no new wars when I was president, I'm a peacemaker. Does that play to his advantage, what's kicking off in the Middle East currently?
The Middle East does matter. I mean, partly because everything matters, because in a close contest, everything matters, small matters matter. But yeah, it matters. It's a massive subject for all of us. In America, in electoral terms, the pro-Israel Jewish vote has always been very, very important. It's been predominantly Democrat, but that's still a big issue. And when it comes to the other side of that line, when it comes to the Palestinian question and Arab Americans, you've got the biggest concentration of Arab Americans in the United States is in the state of Michigan, and that's another one of those swing states. So yeah, it matters.
Well, John, always a pleasure, and enjoy not only Cheltenham Literature Festival, but your trip out of the States in a month's time.
Really looking forward to it, James.